And we're seeing a big change because more and more people now are questioning the safety of their personal care products and getting engaged in the work of the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics. We've also seen a huge growth of the clean cosmetics industry. It was a $3 billion industry when we started this work in 2004, and today it's a $15 billion industry. And it's estimated to grow another $5 billion in the next 5 years. So Susan, what I want to ask you is back in 1995, when you founded EO Products, no one was talking about clean cosmetics. No one was talking about toxic chemicals in personal care and beauty products. So what got you interested in this issue and interested in starting EO in order to tackle this problem?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, just thanks so much for including me and launching into this conversation. It's very close to my heart and close to our company's purpose. Excuse me. So the best way to explain my interest is I was a clothing designer, and my last gig was working for Esprit, and I worked for the late Doug Tompkins. And he hired me to reconceptualize the kids division in 1990. And what that meant was how really focusing in on how do we make our products, where do we make our products, how much energy goes into making our products, and are we doing the best we can from an ecological and sustainable direction to learn, to grow, and he really helped us get very curious about the process when no one else was really talking about it. And so we had this, brown bag lunch series, and David Brower came, and David Foreman came, and Anita Roddick came, and, Helena Hodges came. And so, it was really the portal for me. Also, I was studying Zen Buddhism at the time, and I'm still a Zen student. When you look at interdependence and interconnectedness, and you can't ignore that we're all in it together. And so the cause and effect paradigm and relationship really led me into questioning, is that safe? How are things made? When they evaluated safety, do they think about, for cotton, did they think about the pesticides and how that affected the people who were harvesting the cotton and processing the cotton, and even, all the way to the end user. And also, just studying Rachel Carson and Silent Spring, and when you just look back to how the counterculture alternative movement in the 60s has migrated, all of these things were seeds for me that became incredibly relevant when I was on one of my last buying trips in London in 1991. Doug had left the company and he bought quite a bit of land in Chile. And Susie came back and she was fantastic and a believer. And she was very pressured in terms of the way the company was financed. So a lot of the initiatives that we started weren't yet wholly baked. And so that kind of went by the wayside. Anyway, I was in London and I was running through the fashion icon like Paul Smith over to Muji, over in Covent Garden. And I came across this little courtyard called Neal's Yard. And I walked into a store and I was like, time stood still. It smelled of, all sorts of essential oils and herbs. And I inhaled this lavender angustifolius. And I thought, this is what I want to do, because it was so vital and honest and real. And up above the store, there were all sorts of alternative practitioners, right? Homeopath, aromatherapist, all of Chinese medicine. And you would come downstairs and you would get your prescriptions filled at the store. So they would be whipping up herbal tinctures and stuff. And along with that, they had bath and body care that they made in small batches themselves. And they had a few stores in London. So I was really moved by that model, and I started studying, plant medicine and aromatherapy, and I took a crash course in cosmetic chemistry, and I left Esprit, and I was a license for Neal's Yard for a couple of years here. And what I got to see was how to make things in an artisanal way with essential oils, and how to use essential oils as key ingredients so that you're looking to support them with other plant-based products. And then also the advancement of green chemistry, which was starting at the same time, with the idea of, when we make something, can we start with the premise of do no harm? So that really merged with, when you look at how safety used to be determined by evaluating each ingredient and determining whether it was generally regarded as safe and in what capacity, no one really looked at the onslaught of how many of these chemicals you use together and the possible exponential exposure and consequence of putting all of these things in a soup together with all sorts of environmental pollutants and toxicants, and the fact that women use, 50 products by noon sometimes, whether they're beauty products, cleaning products, putting stuff on their kids, their dog, it's an onslaught. And so it made a lot of sense to me from the beginning to look for ways to absolutely not contribute to conventional thinking that it was all okay, because we already knew that it wasn't okay and that things weren't tested and that no one was really looking at the correlation of possibility when you combined all of those chemicals. And so when we started formulating, it was just very simple formulations with ingredients that we could verify for their either organic or wild crafted, so that they were agriculturally met the standards of doing no harm, and then and then all of the supporting ingredients, and also making beautiful products that worked. So we really looked at, in every conventional category for every ingredient that was supposed to be safe and good and did the job, at options from the get-go, which is, much easier than starting 50 years before that, not having those options, and then having to pivot, a huge multinational company to reformulate. And so we got involved. We were, I think, one of the first signers for Safe Cosmetics. I've worked on, personal care standards with Whole Foods in the industry, developing organic, and we still manufacture all of our products in Marin County.
That's so awesome. Your story is it's so wonderful, because you talk about it being easier 25 years ago than it would have been 50 years ago. But the reality is 25 years ago, it was much harder than it is to do the same kind of work now. Right. And, there's lots and lots of clean cosmetics companies popping out all over the place because, people are seeing that it's not only possible, but it's profitable. And that's important, because that's an important data point that we use to convince policymakers to change laws as well. The one thing that I want to touch on is you're mentioning that you were one of the early signers of the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics Compact for Safe Cosmetics, which is true. And back when we started the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics in 2004, we issued a challenge to the cosmetics industry to inventory their products for chemicals of concern, to replace the toxic chemicals with safer alternatives, and to practice a higher level of transparency, both in terms of the ingredients in their products, as well as the way they did their work. And EO was one of our very first signers. And by the time we retired the compact in 2011, we had 1,800 companies sign our pledge to make safer products. which again, I think it really speaks to and is a testament to both the timing and the importance of the campaign for safe cosmetics and what we've been trying to do. None of which, of course, could ever have been possible without the help of companies like you, and of course, hundreds of other companies and hundreds of NGO partners as well. So I want to thank you. I personally have so loved our relationship over the years, and I'm so inspired by all that you do. And again, your great products, but also about your personal and political foundation of the work. So let me jump into the second question. So it would be impossible to not talk about what's on everyone's mind, and that is the pandemic that we're living through and living in. It has changed our life in every way imaginable, both in terms of how we live, how we do our work, how we do, or for the most part, don't interact with friends and family. It's mind-blowing. And there is so much we don't know about this virus, which is stumping, of course, even the biggest brains and the best scientific minds. But what we are learning is really troubling about the relationship between toxic chemical exposure and increased susceptibility to COVID. And a couple of things in particular, which really speaks, I think, to not only the relevance of our work, but also the relevance of the environmental health and justice movements that we're a part of, is that low-income people and people of color who are already disproportionately exposed to toxic air contaminants through the air pollution that they experience, both because of where they live and possibly where they work, are more susceptible to COVID, both in terms of the susceptibility and the slowed recovery from the disease because of their compromised respiratory systems. So that makes sense. But the other thing that we're learning, which is so troubling to me, is that exposure to endocrine disrupting compounds, hormonally active chemicals that are also linked to breast cancer, contribute to the very diseases that create the underlying conditions that make people more susceptible to COVID-19. And those are diseases like obesity and diabetes and heart condition, and again, respiratory conditions. So this, again, really speaks to, and I think makes the work that we're doing all the more urgent. BCPP has had to pivot in terms of how we communicate our work. And we're moving to virtual platforms like this one to get the word out. But the substance of our work hasn't changed very much, which I think is surprising, but again, speaks to the relevance of the work. I'm just really curious about EO and how you've pivoted during the pandemic and how you're responding to the challenges and the completely topsy-turvy world we're now living in.
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to go back and thank you so much for your kind words, and just know that we really wouldn't be here without each other, all of us. And so I greatly am inspired by and appreciate all the wonderful work you have done over the many years. So I really enjoyed that, and virtual hug to you, and thank you.
Thank you. Got it.
So let's see. The underserved population is the underserved population that needs so much help and thought and restructuring. I mean, when we launched Everyone, one of the reasons we launched it was because we realized that we could make better products accessible to many more people. I mean, EO isn't a very expensive product, but it's a premium product, and it, has a lot of value. And so, but when you think about that 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Walmart store, 90%, and that the basket size is $65 average, and that they do more cash transactions than not. And you really start to look at what is available in terms of prevention, in terms of causation, and what are their choices. It really starts with, the food they eat, their workplace exposure, where they're living, just so many things that contribute to less of an opportunity to be healthy and safe. And so that was very motivating for us to say, we can make a product that's pretty similar in cost by 2012, we could, that can be competitive. The challenge is getting the word out and convincing people why this is better for you than that. And so, we're working on it in a small way, but we're making headway. So when you start to expand that out with COVID, all of those same problems are amplified and magnified, and it's just a terrible situation all the way across. I was actually on my way to the Natural Products Expo on Monday. I was driving down when they canceled the show at the last minute,
Mm-hmm.
And then in February, a few weeks before that, our hand sanitizer sales started sort of skyrocketing. And we had been through that before with EO, with H1N1 in 2008. Really, times were tough. We were about to go to a 4-day work week for everyone in the company just to hang in and hang on. And it was like that classic thing, like the fax machine went off in 2008. And, someone ordered 10 times the amount of sanitizer that they usually order. So, it was a $10,000 order instead of a $1,000 order.
Wow.
When you fast forward to now, we have 150 people, we've got 2 brands, we've got quite an infrastructure, we can turn out about 2 million products a month. And so, it's a very different sort of a cadence and scale. So the first thing we did was make sure everyone was healthy and safe, and thought about how we could protect and take care of all the people at work, their families, and down the line. So we established all of that protocol, and most people who could work from home to protect the people, themselves and the people who had to work to maintain production. And so since March 20th, we have only been making hand sanitizers and hand soap.
Oh, no kidding.
Mm-hmm. And I think it may continue through the end of the year. And it's really, we're not even meeting demand, but it really is our job. First it was, how do we get to first responders? Because I saw what was happening when I got home was, all the local markets and even the local Walgreens had no hand sanitizers. And here we are in San Rafael putting things off of a line into boxes, onto trucks. And it just circumvents the whole local economy of people who need it now,
Right.
And so it was tricky to balance that out, because we couldn't get it to the places that need it fast enough, except for delivering to, firehouses, police stations, and health workers who needed it badly then. So we made that distinction, and we were able to fulfill that locally. We partnered with Lyft in the beginning before things sort of really went south to try to help everybody stay safe. And we're still on that bandwagon. The thing is about making products that are better for you and healthier for you is we really feel good about contributing to the solution. And so it gives what we're doing even greater meaning and purpose at a time like this. And people are really focused and dedicated. And then it calls into the question of, how can we make it faster, better, and contribute to the greater good, which is our job,
Right.
As a business.
Wow, that is an awesome story. And I'm sure that must have been a difficult decision to make, because people want your other products too. But as someone who has been trying to get your hand sanitizer now for a couple of months, I can attest to the fact that it's clearly getting into the hands of the right people. And, you know, and I really support that and appreciate it. And I know all the first responders do too.
Yes.
Was not a criticism. It was a compliment.
No, you should have called me. I have my secret stash for friends, right? People I didn't even know were my friends have called me, you know, and I do as much as I can for everybody that I can, of course. Yeah.
No, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that story. So I'm going to jump into the third question now, because I'm getting a cue from our tech person that we're running out of time, which is amazing because it feels like we just got started in this conversation. So this is a question that's really near and dear to my heart. You know, I mentioned a little bit earlier that a big part of the way we do our work at Breast Cancer Prevention Partners and the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics is through legislative advocacy. And you and I have worked on a lot of cosmetic safety bills together. You've come to Sacramento with us to testify on behalf of a fragrance disclosure bill. You were fabulous. You let your staff play hooky all the time and come to Sacramento to lobby with us. I mean, it's really shocking, and it kind of stands in pretty stark contrast, I think, to a lot of kind of more conventional body care companies. But I want to share some good news really quickly, and that is a bill that we've been working on together. The Toxic Free Cosmetic Act just got approved by its first policy committee in California. And this is a bill, as you know, that would ban 12 of the worst chemicals from cosmetics on the planet. Chemicals like mercury, formaldehyde, parabens, phthalates, even the perfluorinated forever chemicals that are found in non-stick cookware like Teflon. These are a dozen chemicals that are already banned by the European Union from cosmetics sold there, but legally sold in cosmetics here in the United States. 10 of the chemicals are linked directly to breast cancer, and 9 of the chemicals are linked to a suppressed immune system, which again increases susceptibility to COVID. This bill sounds like it should be a no-brainer, or should have been a no-brainer, but it has experienced incredible resistance because of opposition from the conventional cosmetics companies and their trade associations. You have been right there with us in the trenches. So I want to ask you 2 things. Why do you support this bill, the Toxic Free Cosmetic Act? And why does EO and Susan Black in particular dive into this political fray when so many more traditional companies try to stay as far away from politics as possible?
Well, I don't think it's political. I think it's secular. I think it doesn't matter which side you're on. It's public. It's health and safety. I mean, and health and safety for women and children and people, the vulnerable parts of our population especially, is who is being affected the most by the lack of the lack of diligence on the part of these companies. And it's, you know, very much like tobacco, and it's very much like any, you know, just look at Juul and the whole vaping thing where, you know, it's like, why do you have to punish people, make people sick? Where is it? And then ask for forgiveness. And then it's, you know, a matter of an economic, this isn't an economic model. This is a humanistic health and safety, do the right thing, very basic human rights. And if you are an officer in a company who is not informed about what it is that your company is making, how they're making, what they're doing, which is you know, you get to the tyranny of scale and multinational companies. There's no real accountability. There's no there's no really intention to do the right thing because it's obscured sometimes. And it's sort of, it's a matter of how you spin it. And so I think it's a really basic right and responsibility that all companies should adhere to. I don't understand how you can participate in a lobby defending poison. It's like, it's poison. It's poison. Like, not just a little bit of poison, it's a lot of poison, and it's poison to humanity. It's poison to the ecosystem. It's poison, So then it comes to, okay, where's the science? And then depending on who is sponsoring the study and the reason that they're sponsoring the study, you have to really look at that, because, science gets flopped around and, well, this is safe and we've studied it. But when you start to sort of get underneath about whose advantage is the result of this study and why are we doing this study, it gets a little bit stilted. So I really believe that it's education and consumer driven to change our habits, because that's what happens in the marketplace. And I can look up, over the past 25 years, and it's consumer pressure to make these changes, along with, BCPP and other NGOs that are also a result and, co-arises with the consumer pressure, because we know that it's not right.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, I just want to put a public pitch in for companies like yours that are willing to be political, that are willing to get engaged in these kinds of social change efforts, because I think so many companies think that it will be bad for business, but so many consumers want to shop, at a store and for products that are sold or made by companies that they believe in, that are, again, a part of the solution as opposed to being a part of the problem. So, it seems very intuitive to me, and clearly to you as well. But I hope other companies that aren't necessarily doing the right thing are listening and realize.
And I think that the Unilevers and P&Gs and they really are putting tremendous resources and making great efforts. And yes, I don't know how to answer the question of you're making bleach over here, but you're making natural products over here, and how that integrates, or it's like a Zen koan or something. It's not really so answerable when you're $11 billion in Glad bags all over the world, and how many jobs that takes away, and what's going to replace it. And these are complicated things. The thing I hang on to is that these sort of changes happen over time, and usually a long period of time. So all we can do, and the best we can do, is plant the seeds and continue to take one right step after the other, and keep moving in what we feel is a better direction.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so let's dive into Q&A, because I think I see a lot of questions in the chat box here. And so the first question for you, Susan, is why is ingredient transparency so important to EO? And maybe you could explain what that even means, because maybe some folks don't know.
Well, what that means is that we list everything according to INCI specifications, which is by its in order of descending order. And, first ingredient is the most ingredient and goes all the way down. We include the chemical names. We include the botanical names of all the plants and essential oils. And we've always done this because we felt like people have the right to know. Wouldn't you want to know? Wouldn't we want to know what we were buying? And then there's been a question of proprietary, IP and intellectual property, so that if you, like, the Coca-Cola recipe, if you're making and creating a certain fragrance, or you're doing things in a certain proportion, can't you just say fragrance, or can't you just encapsulate all of those ingredients with one word? And we've never really believed in that, because if you want to reverse engineer something, then not so easy to do, but doable. And that's the least of our worries, actually. It's not a matter of copying us. Sometimes that's a high form of flattery, but it's really a matter of what our intention is. So transparency educates people. It gives people a way of being able to discern and to choose. It allows us to be in dialogue with people and answer the questions and pose new questions. And we evolve that way together.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you. I might just tag team onto that answer. I think transparency is important to consumers, because we think companies have something to hide when they're not upfront about the ingredients in their products, just plain and simple. And in the case of personal care and beauty products, we know that anywhere between a dozen to hundreds of individual ingredients can hide under that one word fragrance on a product label, or that one word flavor on a product label. And more products are flavored, like our kids, like Dr. Pepper flavored chapstick, the majority of toothpastes and mouthwashes. And many toxic chemicals can hide under the word fragrance or flavor in products. And I know EO does voluntarily disclose the ingredients in their fragranced products. It's not the law. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And hundreds of other companies voluntarily disclose fragrance ingredients as well. But again, many hundreds of more companies don't. Mm-hmm. And consumers are really in the dark as to the safety of the products that they're buying, because they're not seeing the ingredients in the fragrance that makes our beauty and personal care products smell good, which is the majority, again, of the products that we use. So thank you for that as well. So let me just jump into another question, which is, okay, this is a question for us, and I'll answer it quickly because we're going to run out of time. And that is, to breast cancer prevention partners, is cost the real reason why so many toxic chemicals are still used by the big guys? That's a very good question. How I want to respond to that, at least, as an advocate that's been working in this industry for a long time, is no. It's not the real reason, because you can buy expensive beauty products that are full of toxic chemicals, and you can buy cheap, inexpensive beauty and personal care products that aren't. So it's not the expense of the product. It's really the intention of the formulator of the company itself, their knowledge and their commitment to making non-toxic products. And it's also an issue of scale, because as more and more companies are using the safer ingredients, more and more of them become available. So that's my quick answer to that. Do we have time for one more question? Okay. All right. So let's see. So people are asking about advocacy efforts and ways to get involved. There's a couple of ways to get involved. Breast Cancer Prevention Partners has an action center on our website at bcpp.org, where you can send an electronic letter to an industry laggard, to a cosmetics company who is lagging behind and selling products with toxic chemicals. Right now, we have an action up targeting Strength of Nature, who makes a product called Just For Me. It's a shampoo that's marketed to kids of color, and it has 17 toxic chemicals linked to cancer, birth defects, endocrine disruption, reproductive harm, etc. In this particular product. We also have actions that people can take to support the California legislation we're working on, like the Toxic Free Cosmetic Act I mentioned, as well as a really important fragrance ingredient disclosure bill that would require the disclosure of unsafe fragrance ingredients in beauty products sold in California. You can also take action on a piece of federal legislation we're working on together, introduced by Representative Jan Schakowsky, called the Safe Cosmetics and Personal Care Products Act of 2019. And it would completely overhaul the way cosmetics are regulated in the US. So we invite people to do that, to visit our websites and find out more. Let's see, I think, do we need to end now? I'm looking at my tech person now. Can I ask one more question?
We can, or we can say to those, that haven't been answered, that we'll get back to them.
All right, so I am being told, unfortunately, that we have to wrap up. And if people want these conversations to last longer than 45 minutes, just please email us and let us know. We'll also respond to all the questions in the chat box, because I see there's 16 of them that didn't get answered because we have your email addresses. I want to leave you with a few thoughts. Might have gotten off to a little bit of a rocky start. Again, this is our very, very first in a series of chats with change makers like Susan that are going to be taking place on a monthly basis. The next Changemaker Chat will happen on June 29th with Dr. Linda Birnbaum, and she is the recently retired director of the National Institute for Environmental Health Sciences. And she is an awesome scientist who stood up time and time again to the Trump administration and to other federal agencies that, that didn't necessarily want to be as protective as they could have in terms of environmental health and justice. So join us on June 29th. You can, again, visit our websites for more information about the work we're doing. Please subscribe to our social media channels where you can find out more. And I also want to, again, put in a pitch for donations. For those of you that have already donated, thank you so much. You're making our important work possible. And we will send you a code for 20% off of EO products and Everybody products the next time you're shopping online at their website, eoproducts.com. And for those of you that haven't already donated, I invite you to do so. Our personal fundraising goal for today's webinar was $1,000, and we've already raised $600, so we're almost there. So if you can contribute $20 or more, we hope that you'll do so.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And again, why? Because we're a watchdog organization working for you to make sure that industry isn't up to shenanigans, and the federal agencies aren't up to shenanigans and hiding bills and policies in COVID relief packages like they've been doing that benefit them and put public health at risk. And we're also your public health advocates on behalf of safer products, free of links to cancer and other adverse health effects, and laws that make the world safer for all of us. So again, please support Breast Cancer Prevention Partners if you're not already, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. And lastly, I would love to thank my friend and mentor and inspiration, Susan Black, for all of the wonderful work that you do. On behalf of all of us, thank you for your great products and just your important conviction and belief in making the world a better place.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much.
And it's 1:46, so we'll sign off now.
Okay.
Bye-bye.